Hey guys, it is time for take 2 of our October wrap-up. Hey guys, if you are new here, welcome to the Book Path. I'm Nicole, and if this isn't your first radio, thanks for sticking around. This is take 2 of our wrap-up. I filmed the wrap-up, oh gosh, about a week ago, and was trying to go and edit it, and found out that somehow my camera messed up and was recording 2 times slower, didn't have any sound with it, so it got all messed up. So I basically had to go through a bunch of changes, and here we are for, like I said, take 2 of our October wrap-up. So let's go ahead and get into it. So we did have quite a few arcs this month. I did not read as much as I wanted to. Every arc that I'm given goes without saying that an honest review is expected of me in relation to me getting these arcs, which I would do anyway, but I know that there's a lot of people out there saying, you know, make sure that you state that, so we're stating that. We're taking care of the things we need to take care of. So our first arc that we were given was Fly Back to Me by Drea Scott. This is basically the story of Cade and Olivia. Cade is, when we get into the beginning of the story, he's in a relationship. He's starting up his own kind of local brewery bar, loves his motorcycles, and you know, is just trying to be a decent guy. Olivia works in a company, just kind of going through the motions, and she is going out one night to have drinks with her friends, and as she's walking back to her car, she is followed, and there is a case of an attempted assault. I say attempted because Cade overhears some noises as he's going to his bike, leaving from his brewery, which is right around the corner, and is able to basically stop what was going to happen. He becomes Olivia's savior. She's in a frantic sort of panic, not really paying attention to what happens, and when she is taken away by the EMTs, she kind of pulls at Cade's hand, pulling off this ring that he was wearing. Olivia, when she's back to like kind of calming down and she's not in that state of panic and is able to kind of recall events, she cannot recall what Cade looks like. She doesn't know his name. The cops won't give her his name because he's chosen to remain anonymous. As time goes by, Olivia only has his ring as a kind of reminder of what happened and her kind of angel, as she calls him. Cade often looks back and he's like, you know, I wonder how that girl that I saved is doing. I wonder if she's okay. He doesn't really know anything about her either. Olivia then wants to go to the police and basically give back his ring with a letter of thanks, not knowing who he is, but at least that way she can tell him the change that she made for her. And so she does this. Cade receives his ring back in the letter, along with a feather that he puts on a keychain for his bike. The feather is kind of that symbol of you've been my angel, you know, that kind of symbology. Some time passes. Olivia goes to a new coffee shop where she bumps into Cade, not knowing who she is. The two bump heads very much. Later on that night, or a day or two afterwards, she ends up at the brewery with one of her coworkers, not realizing it is Cade's brewery. Once again, they butt heads. On the way out, she notices the keychain. So now she knows who he is. Complete 180 personality change on how she wants to treat him. And she now wants to kind of give back to him. And that's where the story kind of picks up on what's going on this kind of butting heads, savior, I'm in love with this person that I can't see because they saved my life. Like, there was a lot of trauma with it. So definitely check trigger warnings for this. I ended up giving it 4 stars. One of the things that I didn't like was that there were a lot of times throughout this relationship where I wondered if Olivia was really only interested in Cade because of the pedestal she had put him on as her savior. And when he kind of faltered from that, she would get angry or upset. And then it was very kind of like a lusting, and it just didn't feel like there was a lot of foundation for it to be anything more until a little later on. I think they cleared it up a little bit, but like for a while it was just, it felt like maybe they were trying to make more out of what should be. Like maybe they should be better off as acquaintances or friends or not knowing who they are. So I had a little bit of issue with that, but I did like how the relationship was in the essence when it did get spicy, because there are some spicy scenes. How Cade treated it, knowing what she had been through, and just kind of helping her to heal certain aspects of that in regards to helping her build herself up, but also helping to change how she saw him and how he wanted to be seen. So I thought that was really well done. So 4 stars on that. Next up, we went through our magical readathon year in Aurelian prompt, which for this month, for the month of October, was to read a book with foiling on the cover, in order to kind of, I think it was to meditate with the fae or the fairies. And so for that, we ended up picking up The Blood of Hercules. I'm probably going to get a little hate of this. I gave it 3 stars. I wasn't too crazy about it. I had heard from multiple family members that they loved this book. It was amazing, and I felt bad because I just wasn't seeing it. Not to say it wasn't bad. It definitely started to pick up towards the end, but there was a lot of questions that I was left with in this world. You basically have Alexis, who is an orphan. She's put into a very bad foster situation in this kind of dystopian world where the gods have come back. They were in hiding, like they lived in their age of Greece, their ancient times. They left and then they've come back, and now it's kind of this dystopian world, and only the gods and their descendants like live like the 1%ers. And she has this kind of orphaned brother that she helps out with, and they have a wolf, and it's discovered that when she does this testing at her high school that she has divine blood in her. She is one of the offspring of one of the gods. And so she goes to be, she's taken to be part of these trials where whoever survives the trials will be granted like kind of demigod status, and they will become one of these divine houses and live a life of luxury. And there is a kind of splice between the pantheons where you have one sect who's kind of just like living in luxury, and then you have this other one who, for lack of better term, because I can't remember the terms of what they called them, these included like Hades, Persephone, and kind of the underworlders, if you will. They're the ones that are really fighting the battles against these other monsters that lurk and protecting kind of this Greek pantheon. And so while she's in the trials, she is being, kind of her coaches are Achilles and Patroclus, and she is being taught by Augustus and Charon. Now, there is a little bit of a romance brewing between Augustus, Charon, and Alexis. It's one-sided because she has no clue what's going on, and she's thinking they despise her. And then you find out a little bit later Achilles and Patroclus may or may not be throwing their hat in the ring. So this is not necessarily why I choose, might be a reverse harem. It started hinting into it later on in the book series, and then it cut off. So obviously book 2 will hopefully go more into that. Here's the issues that I had with it. And I don't want people to think that I'm tearing it down. These are just the questions that I was like, The first and foremost one is that if you had this foster care system, right, and stuff happens to her foster parents, the kids are left alone. No foster people come to get the kids. So you have these 2 kids that are living in, I don't know if it's Montana, Minnesota. It is one of those states that gets frigidly cold, like below freezing temperatures. And these kids are living outside in the woods. They do not have a shelter. She explains that they have some cardboard boxes. Now, they do say that there is a neighbor who has a trailer that he lets them stay in there when it gets like below 0. But I'm like, I'm sorry. In 20 to 30 degree temperatures with winds and snow, how are these kids surviving? They don't have food. They talk about how you get these kind of food stamps, but then they said that the kids aren't allowed, like food stamps, kids aren't allowed to work, so they can't get the food stamps. So she's trading or something. It never really says, like, it says later on she's tutoring in exchange for like food stamps and stuff. But I'm like, how are they surviving? Like, how are they surviving? How are they eating? How are they making their way? If they don't have like blankets and all these other sorts of things, how are they surviving these winters? Like, how do they make it to high school? It's never really addressed. And for me, that just doesn't seem a little believable that these two kids would survive like year after year after year going through this when they don't have the food and anything. And why? Like, because they go to school, nobody in the school system knows about this. So I'm just like, little tough. Then you have this world with the gods where the gods are having troubles with procreation, and female deities are hard to come by, right? So when Alexis gets her divine kind of blood and it's discovered that she has some sort of female, like she's half female demigod, why is she thrown into the trials in the first place? If in the gods' kingdom, the female deities are protected because procreation is an issue, why is she not protected? Why is she thrown into the ring to fight for her life when females are scarce and you need them? Like, that does not make sense to me. Does not make sense. She's fighting for her life. There's parts of the book where I don't know if the author meant for it to come off as confusing so that you kind of felt what Alexis was going through and that haze and that I don't know what the heck's going on in just survival mode, or not. If she did, great, worked out great, because there were quite a few chapters where I was like, I have no idea what I'm reading right now because it's so like boom, 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 not making any sense. It was just a lot. So that was kind of disorienting. The characters, I wasn't a huge fan of like any of the characters. All the guys sucked. Like they were jerks. There was not really any redeeming qualities about them. Even like the nice cute things that you think they're doing, there's a reason why they're doing it. It's a planned strategy. They're not really doing it out of the kindness of their heart. And Alexis is just, she's just kind of there. You don't really like hear her things. She's got a little bit of an obsession with like mathematicians or these scientists. And there's so many times throughout the book that she's referencing this one scientist and she's having like fantasies about this guy and loving him and wanting, and it just got old really quick. Like it really got old to me really quick. And so it was just like, it was an interesting storyline. And there were different things that I thought were done well within the Pantheon and kind of the world that there was trying to be created, but I felt like there was still a lot left to do in the world building to make it more understandable and interesting. It just wasn't that likable. I'm probably going to borrow the second book, and we'll go from there and see if I'm going to like it or not. I just, at this point in time, I don't want to go and invest in buying the sequel if I don't know if I'm going to be continuing with the series. But like I said, I know there's a lot of people that loved it. Just for me, wasn't exactly there. So next up, we did a little bit of mood reading, and I wanted something a little Halloween-y, little what's going on. And so we ended up picking up The Blood Moon Hunt by Morgan Mercy. This was a really interesting book. It started off being extremely off-putting. I will say that if you pick this up, there's going to be some triggers and some situations that are going to be a little off-putting in the beginning. Just bear with it. When the storyline starts coming through, it gets better. In this one, you have, I can't remember her name, but you have this girl who is living in our contemporary world, going through the motions. She's kind of on the end of like a breakup of this weird relationship. Her friends want to get her out for Halloween night. There is this one club that is opening up for one night only, and it's like they got tickets to get in. So they go to the club, and right away she's noticing that everybody that works there is dressed in these black cloaks with like masks, and she's like, okay, maybe this is just because of Halloween, but it's just really weirding her out. She has to go to the bathroom, and on her way to the bathroom, she gets accosted by one of the guys, and she's trying to fight him off when one of these four guys that she had seen from the second floor above her looking down, they have a little bit different masks, and one of them comes to her aid to rescue her. So now she's kind of drawn in, but she still has that weird feeling. And there's an announcement that there's going to be activities that are going to be starting, and this is their last chance to basically choose to participate or not to participate, and that if they stay, it is at their own risk. She is wanting to leave. She's trying to get her friends to leave. She's like, something doesn't feel right. We need to go. None of her friends want to leave. They're all in for it. They don't know what's going to happen. They don't care if there's a risk. You know, they're just kind of being their wild night. They're like, we're going to have fun with it. She ends up staying. The club disappears. They're out in the woods, and some of these guys end up chasing down the women, and let's just say there is questionable consent involved. At this point, the main character runs. They tell them, you need to survive whatever nights. She's noticing there's something different about the women after they've been with these guys, and she doesn't know what is going on. 4 of the men, who you end up finding out are warlocks, Damien, Ronan, Adrian, and Lucian, take notice of her and that there's something different about her, and they start chasing her. You end up finding out that there's this warlock world where witches kind of had all this power. They would give some of their powers to their male human lovers. The male humans ended up finding out that if they killed the witches and harnessed their souls, they would have immortality and powers and all these sorts of things. And then they basically killed all the witches. And then they found out if they went after humans and didn't kill them, but once again, questionable consent, at the moment of ecstasy, their souls would basically be available for the taking, giving the warlocks magical power, and that's how you get this hunt that goes on. You end up finding out not all is as it seems. Our main character girl is showing some skills and powers of her own, and there might be a reason for that, and that is kind of where the story ends up going. I ended up giving it 4 stars. I thought once this, like I said, it was off-putting in the beginning where I didn't know if I was going to want to continue with the amount of force and questionable activities. But once the story started picking up, it was actually really interesting. One of the things that I think bothered me is our female main character was a virgin, and that is not one of my tropes that I like in romance. I am not for the female main character or the male main character being virgin. I am of a certain age where when I read spicy books and they are very spicy, I'm thinking that these people know kind of things. They've had some experience. So when you have this girl who is a virgin and the things she is able to do that one would probably only see in certain types of videos, not as believable. Like certain things she could do, I mean, kudos to her, but not as believable, and just kind of like takes you out of the story. But it was really interesting, and it did leave off on a little bit of a cliffhanger, so obviously I ended up having to pick up the next book, which was The Blood Moon Oath. In this book, it is a new group. You get a little bit of aftermath from book 1 in the beginning that sets up what's going or where they're going in the second book, but the second book takes place in another part of this kind of magical realm where these warlocks are, and now you have a new girl who is getting her witch powers amongst this group of warlocks. And this is a more northern, almost Viking warrior-like tribe where power is taken, power is fought for, very warlike, very battle ready. And in this you have Selena, who is our main female character, and you have the 3 warlocks that are going to be our little our romantic interest. And you have Kale, Finn, and Torin, and basically they are the leaders of this group or faction of warlocks, although there is a lot of discontent going on because there is one kind of upstart in their group who is wanting power for himself. And obviously Kale, Finn, and Torin come across Selena. She has this reputation as a hunter for hunting down warlocks due to her backstory. So they capture her, one because she is this hunter that's been threatening their group and taking out some of their warlocks, and 2, because when they try to do it, she exhibits powers that she's not supposed to have, and so they are intrigued. So they kind of lock her up in their rooms so that the other warlocks don't see her, notice her, start asking questions, 1, to maintain their power, but also because they are intrigued and they need to know what's going on. When it is discovered that she is there, she kind of threatens the upstart trying to take everything down to a battle. And in this battle, she is able to have some champions fight alongside her, which is obviously going to be these guys. So now these guys are going to kind of use her to take care of this upstart that they've been wanting to. And now they have a kind of legal way of doing that within their society. But they also are going to train her, and in the process of training her, they're starting to have their conflicted emotions towards her, wanting to be with her, and discovering like mate bonds. Like, this is kind of a fated mate story. I liked Torin. Torin, when you first meet him, he's like animalistic and kind of a jerk and a player and everything. But as the story progresses, he is like the funnest, sweetest, playfulest guy. Like, he could hurt you, but he's also kind of fun, and he's sweet to Selena. So it's got a lot of interesting dynamics relationship wise. I loved in this series that they give all these characters kind of these backstories to why they exist in the warlock world, because not all these guys agree with how the rules are being done and how you're taking these souls and how you're doing these things. And it's become sort of like a generational issue where some of this newer generation is starting to question things. And so it was just, like I said, interesting, well done. I think there's at least 2 more books in the series that I didn't get a chance to read yet, but I will be continuing with this. I did give this one 4 stars as well, and that was mostly because there was a chunk of the story where things were happening, they were training, but it started to feel a little tedious, and I was wanting a little bit more to pull me in. Just because it was like, and we're training again, and we're training again, and we're training again. And that just kind of felt a little much. But other than that, it was really good. So after that, we went after our magical readathon. There was 1 course that we needed to finish up that I ended up using some of my guild points to extend that course so I could finish it. And that was to have a book that had tech on the cover. And originally I had done a study in drowning. I soft DNF'd that one just because I was wanting a little bit more of the fantastical fantasy, and it was feeling more of like an academic gothic-y one, which I was just not vibing with right then and there. Wasn't bad, so I will probably try to go back to it at another point in time. I just wasn't wanting it at that point in time. So I ended up switching it out for, spoiler alert, because it had a bridge on the cover, and bridges are technology. I looked it up to make sure, because I don't have a lot of books with tech on them. I really don't. So I ended up picking up spoiler alert, and you basically have Marcus, who is the star of this Greek, like, it seems like a retelling of the Iliad and the Odyssey kind of fantasy adventure. And he is the heartthrob star in this show. And you have April, and April is a geologist who is a huge fan of the show. She writes fan fiction, she does some cosplay, and she's like obsessed with the show. Marcus, when he's out in public, has this persona of being kind of this blonde, airheaded ditz of a guy. he does that because he doesn't want people asking a lot of questions. He wants to protect his privacy. It's kind of a mask that he wears. April sees this and is kind of thrown off of him. April's going through a job career change, and she's trying to come to terms with her own body because she is a curvy girl, and she decides to heck with it. She's going to live life, not hide in the shadows anymore. And she posts one of her cosplay pictures to her social media, and she's getting slammed because of her weight. People are not that nice to her. Marcus sees her. He thinks she's beautiful, and he comes to her rescue on social media, asking her out on a date to kind of tell these guys off that aren't being so nice, but also to like help her out. When they're on this date, he's got his mask up. She's annoyed by him, but he starts letting little things slip on who he really is underneath the mask, and she kind of falls for that. Now, the secret twist to this is, while April writes her fan fiction, she has this kind of best friend online that also writes fan fiction. And they go and they toss ideas back and forth. They talk about their days, and they have this kind of like love blossoming. Neither one of them knows that it's them. Marcus is the one writing with April. April doesn't know that it's Marcus. So there is a little bit of a hidden identity thing going on with the romance going on. Now, I ended up DNFing this about 100 pages in. I just was not pulled into this story. It was kind of like, okay, I understood the storyline. The fan fiction was kind of cute. But I just wasn't feeling it. I wasn't vibing with the characters. I wasn't like really, it just, I don't know, it just wasn't working for me. One of the big things that I didn't like in here, I loved the fact that towards the end of the story, there were kind of copies of their text messages to each other and what they were writing in the fan fiction world. I did like that. I thought that was a fun thing to do. But there were so many fan fiction acronyms and lingo in this book. There is no glossary of terms. Now, while I have read fan fiction, I am not diehard. I don't know all the lingo. And so the amount of lingo that's in this felt very much more geared towards a specific audience base than me. And I would read all these acronyms, had no idea what they meant, would have to go and try to look them up to find out what was going on, and it would just continuously pull me out of the story where I just wasn't having a fun time with it anymore. So I think for people that do love fan fiction, that do know this lingo that's going on and kind of the fan fiction world, they'd probably have a blast with this. But for me, I just kept getting pulled out. The characters weren't pulling me back in, and it just kind of went downhill from there. So unfortunately, I did DNF it, but you know what? We're going to count it for our class because we were trying. We were struggling with this prompt. So we're stretching it. We're doing it. We're going to count it done because we gave it the old college try, as it were. So done. And our last book that we got was another arc, and this is A Fate Drawn to Flame by Skylark Melody. This was different. In the beginning, I thought this book was going to be a fantasy world with fantasy elements, fantasy characters, and things like that. Even the blurb kind of made it feel that way. Disclaimer, it is not a fantasy world book. Not that that's bad. Not that it's bad. It just wasn't what I thought it was going to be. It's a paranormal fiction. It's a paranormal romance. Paranormal. Basically, you have this main girl, Araxia, who she lives in the Midwest with her mom. Her father has passed away. Her brother had gone missing. And so to kind of make a new path for herself, she moves herself and her mom to this very small Midwest town where she teaches music lessons at a very small studio with one of her friends. And in the very beginning, she comes home to find her mother laying on the floor, had a heart attack, and sadly there was nothing that could be done, and now she has lost her mother as well. So a good portion of the beginning of this book is dealing with her grief and just kind of pulling herself back together. The music school is starting to take off and change in ways that she was not really a fan of. So she's kind of not knowing what to do. She's floundering. It comes upon her that every year she takes this annual 2-week camping trip where she kind of resets herself and also brings back memories of when she used to go camping with her father and her brother. So it's her way of connecting with them as well. And while she's out on her camping trip, she gets to like this kind of mountainside where she is attacked by 2 wolves. She falls down the mountainside, but she is saved by Constantine. Now, Constantine is the alpha of this wolf shifter tribe that has this village or city in this forest that nobody knows about. Is protected and kept from human eyes through a veil or some kind of cloaking thing by this like kind of magical flame. And they have lived in this society. They've built it up. It's almost like a modern world mixed with like a village and castles and things like that, but they do have like modern amenities like a shower, and they have their own hospital and things like that. Cell phones don't work there though, so it's kind of those things. She does not know, Alexis does not know, or Aurexia doesn't know that this is a wolf shifter community. She does not know that they exist, and nobody tells her while she is healing from her injuries from this fall. She obviously feels drawn to Constantine. Constantine feels drawn to her. This is kind of a fated mate's story. But obviously Constantine's like, well, if she goes back to her world, you know, what then? You know, can we trust her with our secrets? Because there's some stuff going on in the wolf community, as it were. But also it's the, I don't want to have to force her to choose this because of our relationship. I want her to be free to do what she wants to do, but at the same time it comes off as pushing her away. So that kind of, you know, has a pull and tug at this relationship that's trying to build. And obviously the storyline goes on to where when she does get back to her world, how does that happen? Will she go back to them? And just kind of what goes on there. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. There was, towards the beginning, it just felt a little lagging where I'm wondering what the heck's going to go on, because she's in like her world and she knows things, and you're just kind of like, okay, well, what's going to go on to get this story back? Because you kind of know where it needed to go, but you're just waiting for like, how is that going to happen? And there was a lot of time spent on her handling her grief and what was going on with her family situation. Once you get to about 60%, this book pops off. It pops off, and it did so much that I needed to sit down and not move so I could finish this book, because I didn't want to put it down after that point. That's what kind of like brought it to that 4-star range. Like it was about a high 3-star, and then like it just popped off and was just like boom, 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 and all this stuff was going on. And I loved how Aurexia was handling these situations, because she's a human being. She doesn't really have powers. She doesn't really have all these things. But you do find out there could be more to her than meets the eye, but you know, she is a human. So it was just really interesting. It did leave off on a cliffhanger. I am excited for the sequel, because like I said, once it hit that pop-off moment, there's a lot that I was like, oh, ooh, oh, wow. Like, those were the reactions. So gave it 4 stars. It was a really good read. I recommend if you want wolf shifters, like kind of this magical cloaked world. There is some infiltrating forces, if you will. Not necessarily enemies to lovers, but they do butt heads quite a bit. Fated mates. And it does speak about grief and loss and things like that. So, and it does so in a good way as she's working through things. So I do recommend for that. That is it. That is everything that we ended up reading for October. Funny enough, I really didn't feel like I read significantly less books in the month of October, but I was right around the same page count as like the previous month. So that was a little interesting. But it was different. There was just a lot of stuff going on in October with government shutdowns and spirit weeks at school and Halloween, and it just it was a lot to do where just reading kind of fell to the background a little bit. So hopefully we can pick that up a little bit more in November. Although right now as I'm filming this, it's like day 10 or something in November because video number 1 did not want to work. And we are still lagging a little bit. I'm definitely feeling that kind of end of the year lag. So hopefully I'll find some good books that'll pick me up a little bit and get me energized as we get into holiday season a little bit more. But other than that, I hope your October went well for you. If you did anything fun and crazy or whatever for Halloween, or if you had a really interesting Halloween costume, let me know in the comments below. Other than that, I hope you guys are doing well. Stay warm, stay healthy, stay hydrated, and I will see you guys in the next video.